What's good, my Daredevils? It is me, MT, and welcome back to another Heavy Spoilers Breakdown. Today, we are diving into the absolutely phenomenal 5th episode of Daredevil Born Again Season 2, a flashback episode featuring everybody's favorite soon-to-be-slain Foggy Nelson. But thankfully, it's an episode that does not waste its much-anticipated return of actor Eldon Henson, as it highlights exactly what made Foggy Nelson such a special part of both Matt Murdock's life as well as the lives of the people of New York as a whole. So I'm going to practice a little bit of mercy of my own by ending this intro so that we can jump right into it. Episode 5 of the season is titled The Grand Design, an appropriate title considering how the episode centers around both the iconic Rabbit in a Snowstorm painting that brought both Wilson Fisk and Vanessa Mariana together, and also the concept of fate and destiny in general. We'll talk about that second part a little bit later and its significance to the MCU's overall multiverse saga narrative. But the episode begins with the sounds of crashing waves as Vanessa Fisk has a dream of walking down the beach hand in hand with her big white wall of a hubby, Wilson, much like she told Big Willie a few episodes ago after her foreboding nightmare about Bullseye. These ocean sounds would of course be featured at the end of the episode as well when Vanessa makes her transition to the afterlife. This tranquil beach vibe is quickly shifted to the harsh reality of Vanessa being in critical condition at the hospital, with the distraught Wilson needing to be held back as the doctors attend to his dying wife. Officer Powell, undoubtedly pissed that Bullseye eliminated even more of his guys after breaking through the AVTF defenses, visits the mayor at the hospital, vowing to find both Bullseye and Daredevil by any means possible. And I love how Powell is presented during this scene in particular, appearing only as a darkened and sometimes blurry silhouette in the background as Wilson continues to focus his attention on Vanessa, not truly acknowledging Powell's presence at all, despite ordering Powell to deliver both Matt Murdock and Benjamin Poindexter to him alive, undoubtedly so he could punch them in the penis a few times before inserting their collective rectums into their esophaguses. Esophagi? I don't know. The point is, if Fisk gets them, they gon' die. And after some time passes, Fisk then meets up with Dr. Murati, one of the best brain surgeons in the field. Dr. Murati promises the mayor that he'll do everything in his power to save Vanessa, but says that, quote, "Nothing is certain where the mind meets the soul," with the doctor, of course, referring to the human brain, as that is the physical location where the mind and the soul are thought to reside within human beings. But if your brain is working correctly, then it should love all of our dope-ass merch options over at the Heavy Spoilers merch store. We just dropped our brand new Deadly Aim t-shirt inspired by Bullseye of Daredevil Born Again. But if you're on Team Daredevil, that's okay. We've also got you covered with our new Fearless t-shirt inspired by the Man Without Fear himself. We've got all that and so much more over at the Heavy Spoilers merch store. So stop by heavyspoilers.shop today to get you some. But let's switch things on over to Daredevil and Bullseye for a bit, because not long after the start of the episode, we catch up with those two lovebirds as they hold each other tightly while running from the police. The two of them find their way to the back of a random kitchen where Matt attempts to save Bullseye from bleeding out after being shot by Vanessa Fisk at Fogwell Gym. And I love how the cooks immediately start giving Daredevil anything that he needs before helping the two of them escape, because we finally get a true look at just how much the city itself truly values Daredevil as the very symbol of hope that swordsman Jack Duquesne told Matt that he was in episode 4.
You're not a hero. You're a symbol now. Hope for an entire city.
And after sustaining some battle damage after his brush with Bullseye in the AVTF, we can see even more red peeking through Daredevil's black Shadowland-inspired suit. And like I brought up before in a previous breakdown, this imagery of the black on Daredevil's suit slowly crumbling away over time is meant to reflect this overall theme of rebirth and being born again that the series is all about. Because much like how a butterfly emerges from a cocoon transformed and changed, Daredevil himself will become reborn after overcoming New York's darkest days without losing himself to his own darkness, much like we see visualized in the Daredevil intro animation when we see a statue of Daredevil being formed from the rubble of a crumbled New York. And a big reason why Matt hasn't completely lost himself is because of his dead homie, Foggy Nelson, whose companionship would end up becoming a living reminder for Matt to embody the core tenet of his own religious faith: mercy. And it would be this very merciful nature within Daredevil that would cause a leaking Bullseye deep confusion and frustration, especially after Matt casually tossed his Poindexter ass off of a roof the moment Benny sniped the Nelson out of Nelson and Murdock last season. And as Matt carries Bullseye through some underground tunnels, Benjamin tries to convince him that his highly unlikely survival after falling from such a ridiculous height meant that he had some type of divine mission to balance the scales, as part of some grand design crafted by some cosmic artist weaving the threads of fate.
Maybe that's the grand design. You're getting it.
And this idea of a grand design comes up again later on in the episode when Vanessa tells Fisk that they were destined to be together because of this grand design.
Not luck at all. It was the grand design.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And of course, through Marvel projects like the Loki series and Sony's Spider-Verse films, we, the audience, know that both Bullseye and Vanessa are right. There has been a grand design in the MCU, a cosmic design heavily influenced by the emotion-fueled choices of every single living being in the cosmos. And it's those very emotional choices that characters like Vanessa, Wilson, Foggy, and Matthew made 12 years ago that are the focus of this particular episode, as we learn exactly how these emotional connections act as the first dominoes that would pave the path of their futures. In the case of Vanessa, when we enter her memories surrounding the circumstances that caused her to meet Wilson Fisk 12 years ago, we see how Vanessa's deep emotional attachment to the seemingly insignificant all-white rabbit in a snowstorm painting would lead her to attempt to convince one of her colleagues at the Scene Contempo art gallery that the painting will sell. And not only is she confident that the painting will sell, but it'll also sell significantly above the asking price, specifically when someone sees the painting and has their own unique emotional reaction to it, an emotional reaction that makes them reflect or confront the reality of their own inner emptiness. And that, of course, is exactly what happens when Vanessa and Fisk meet at the very end of episode 3 of Netflix Daredevil season 1. She's immediately drawn to Fisk because of how locked in he was while staring at the rather simple looking piece of art. And during that scene, Vanessa tells Wilson that it's not about the artist's name or the skill required, not about the art itself. All that matters is, how does it make you feel? To which Wilson replies that the painting makes him feel alone. And in last episode's breakdown, I did note how the bloody rabbit in a snowstorm painting that we see Vanessa Fisk eating right next to at the end of the last season was meant to foreshadow Vanessa Fisk's bloody fate this season, specifically through Vanessa's bloodied white dress. So much like how the rabbit in a snowstorm painting made Wilson feel alone when they first met, Vanessa herself would end up making Wilson feel the same way during their final meeting, as he watches her die at the end of this episode, causing Vanessa to end up becoming a living representation of that very same art piece. A living representation that would ironically make Wilson Fisk feel even more alone than he's ever been before. Vanessa's deep emphasis on emotion in both of these episodes is super important to this idea of the grand design. And I believe that these themes were specifically underscored here in this episode in order to symbolically tie into Marvel Studios' overall multiverse saga, a saga that's due to come to a close very soon with the next two Avengers films, Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Because much like we learned in the season 1 finale of the Loki series, the fates of every soul in the entire 616 timeline were being carefully manipulated and molded by a madman of a grand designer seated at the end of time, the victorious Kang variant known as He Who Remains. He Who Remains and the TVA spent eons perfecting the grand design of the 616 timeline, making sure that the emotions of everybody that existed in that timeline would lead them down a specific path, immediately arresting anybody whose hearts and minds led them to make a choice that did not align with Kang's cosmic plan, and erasing the changed universe they accidentally created with their emotional choices. And I mean, hell, we see this emotional manipulation best exemplified through the Loki variant Sylvie, a girl that He Who Remains manipulated into hating him so much that she would expose his internal organs to the outside world with her sword, causing the multiverse to start branching wildly. The grand designer He Who Remains made sure that both Vanessa and Wilson would meet in order for the two of them to influence the very future of New York City, as well as the entire world at large through their powerful union. Because you gotta remember, the mutant saga is on the way, and He Who Remains knew that. So, in order to further prime 616 Earth for max superhuman xenophobia, massive influential figures like the Fisk family were needed in order to promote anti-superhuman propaganda and advance legislation aimed at hunting down vigilantes, paving the way for more extreme measures in the future, like the inevitable mutant hunting sentinel program. So yeah, that all being said, because Vanessa let her heart be her guide, she would make the unpopular decision to hang up the painting that would bring her and Wilson together, with Wilson having discovered the Scene Contempo art gallery at the suggestion of his old pal James Wesley, played once again by actor Toby Leonard Moore. Poor Wesley was of course tragically slain by psycho serial killer Karen Page in episode 11 of Netflix Daredevil season 1. I mean, yeah, sure, he did kidnap her and threaten to eliminate everybody that she cares about if she didn't cave to his demands, but come on, man, Wesley had a family. I mean, we don't know much about that family, admittedly, but we did know that he had a big, bald, evil egg of a boyfriend who was waiting for Wesley to tuck him into bed that night. Also, I'm pretty sure Wesley's optometrist was equally devastated at his demise, but that's neither here nor there. And purchasing art at Vanessa's gallery, of course, allows Wilson and Wesley to hide all of the dirty money they've made through their new alliance with Russian mafia leaders Vladimir and Anatoly Ronskahov. But there are matters that art galleries cannot deal with, like silencing street thug Lionel Ray McCoy, who Wesley refers to as the Lion after receiving a call about McCoy getting off on his litany of charges, thanks to a legal loophole from a clerical error discovered by young avocados at law Foggy Nelson and Matthew Murdock. But luckily for Fisk, Wesley is a problem solver who knows some pretty handy people. People like Buck Cash Money Cashman, who Wesley apparently has known since before the days he became a high-level member of a criminal enterprise. Wesley hands him an envelope with McCoy's information, which tells us that McCoy was born on April 13th, 1977 in New York City, making him around 38 years old around the year 2015. And it also correctly lists his address as 130 and a half West 49th Street, apartment 5E, with a 10019 zip code for Midtown Manhattan. However, when Buck arrives to that address to send Mr. McCoy to the afterlife, he is nowhere to be seen, thanks to Lionel McCoy's childhood friend Foggy Nelson, who gives him all the money that both he and Matt saved up to start their own law firm, without consulting Matt Murdock at all. And I don't blame Foggy, because young Matt had next to no sympathy for McCoy at all, especially after seeing how terribly McCoy has bullied Foggy for as long as the two of them have known each other. Not only that, but McCoy not accepting a plea deal screwed Matt and Foggy hardcore, leading their boss Mr. Levine to punish them to work late into the night. But it would be this very punishment that would end up leading Foggy to discover the clerical error that would ultimately earn McCoy his freedom, but not before discovering that his homie Matt has a weird thing for feet, which is an absolutely wild fact to know about a superhero. And I bet that man was ready to go as soon as he super sniffed out She-Hulk's massive, green, sweaty, gamma-radiated size 15 feet. But hey, no judgment.
I'm quietly judging you.
But anyways, as the two of them debate over whether or not McCoy even deserves to be set free, we can notice a number of interesting details about their office. Firstly, we can see one of the boxes in their office has the name Lear, Mary written on it, with Mary Lear actually being the name of one of the set decoration interns on the production. And a little bit later on, we get a shot of this bobblehead of a bearded man wearing a shirt with the words, "We are not an allegory" on it. This bobblehead is actually of Daredevil Born Again showrunner Dario Scardapane. And the quote is actually from an April 2025 interview that he did with Men's Health magazine about the series. Dario would say this phrase, "We are not an allegory," while clarifying that while Daredevil Born Again might echo certain real-world events that may hit close to home to people in America, the series themes of a fascist political power grab is meant to draw from actual history, rather than functioning as a direct parallel or hidden commentary on the politics happening currently in the nation. But hey, if the shoe fits, am I right? All right. But one of the coolest things about how this office scene was shot is how the set design seems to perfectly split both Matt and Foggy's halves of the office where their desks meet. Even the window view that Matthew Murdock hilariously has stops at the exact space where their two desks meet. An excellent piece of cinematography that not only shows how divided the two of them were while discussing what to do with McCoy, but also serves to reflect how the two of them appear to embody the two symbolic halves of Lady Justice. During their argument, Matt embodies Lady Justice's sword of swift and righteous punishment, while Foggy embodies Lady Justice's scales, as he seeks true, fair, and impartial deliberation for his buddy McCoy. And that is when Foggy reminds Matt about his own inner compassion, and how sometimes we should give a little mercy to others, even if we feel like they don't deserve it. Because Foggy knows that circumstances aren't always black and white, and that sometimes people get a bad deal and need extra compassion. And that lesson in emotional empathy would end up being one that would help forge Matt Murdock's own future path as a righteous, crime-fighting hero as part of the cosmic grand design. And that very merciful nature would then lead Daredevil to carrying Bullseye all the way to Clinton Church, where Bullseye tells Daredevil how every person on the planet is just attempting to scratch the itch of their own personal emotional compulsions, which is exactly how the emotion-fueled grand design of the MCU works, like I mentioned before. But their conversation would be cut short by the sudden arrival of the AVTF, who almost capture both Daredevil and Bullseye, were it not for Daredevil pushing past his own inner selfishness to save his enemy, just like Foggy would have wanted. What a king! Couldn't be me, because I would have let Fisk blow his ass down over at Fogwell Gym.
I believe there's a hero in all of us.
Not.
But someone who surprisingly doesn't get his ass blown down by Buck Cashman is, of course, Daniel Blake, whose ass is in major hot water after BB Urick seemingly leaks information about Vanessa's critical condition to real-life Spectrum news reporter Annika Pergament, who we see on the TV screen in the hospital. And due to the incredible acting, writing, editing, and camera work of this episode, we can truly feel Daniel's inner dread as he believes that Buck is about to put one in the back of his head before chopping up his body into little pieces. Like, I was still very much at the edge of my seat, even though I knew damn well that Buck Cashman was just preparing to do away with Christoffy's body, as we just saw him assassinate Christoffy at the end of last episode. But even though Daniel managed to escape death for now, things might not look too good for him and anyone else who pisses Fisk off in the near future. As the episode, of course, ends with Vanessa succumbing to her injuries after Wilson tells her the story of how they met. The episode ending with Vanessa dreaming of walking down the beach with her husband is not just us watching the dreams of a dying woman, in my opinion, but also us getting a peek into what Vanessa Fisk's afterlife potentially looks like. Because as we learned in the Moon Knight series, what happens after death for beings of the MCU is entirely dependent on what each particular being believes in the most. For Mark Spector, his afterlife was the peaceful field of reeds from Egyptian mythology because of his own belief in Khonshu. For Jane Foster, her experiences with Thor and Asgard, combined with her valor in battle, awarded her the privilege to join the fallen Asgardian heroes at Valhalla. And before Captain Marvel annihilated the Supreme Intelligence, the Kree people believed that they all joined the collective consciousness of the Supreme Intelligence. And because of that belief, the Supreme Intelligence grew more intelligence with every new added mind. And of course, we saw Rocket Raccoon briefly enter his own ideal afterlife of a forever and beautiful sky with his friends in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So in that same vein, because all Vanessa wanted was to be by the ocean with Wilson, her afterlife is likely just her chillin' by the ocean forever, waiting for Wilson to come join her whenever his Humpty Dumpty ass finally falls off of the damn wall. And we saw a similar type of audio cue happen directly after the tragic death of Hector Ayala at the end of last season's 3rd episode, as that episode ended with the sounds of Koki frogs, giving us a look into Hector's own afterlife, where he's enjoying the soothing sounds of Koki frogs from Puerto Rico. But as Vanessa waits for her husband in the afterlife, an emotionally tilted Wilson is bound to lose all emotional control entirely and turn to even more drastic measures in order to hunt down the men he believes are responsible for his wife's death. And that blind red-hot rage will inevitably lead him to his own downfall by the end of the season. Because like Bullseye said, we are who we are. The mayor may have been able to keep his inner rage in check in order to play politics, but now that the woman keeping him together is gone, all bets are now off. And we are definitely going to see the Kingpin be unleashed in these last few episodes of this season. And I cannot wait for all that shit, son! But anyways, that is it for this breakdown of episode 5 of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Let us know your thoughts on the episode in the comment section down below. But like always, you guys can follow me at Mastertainment on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button and maybe even hitting that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. Really helps a lot. But like always, I've been MT, you guys have been amazing, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.